Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Kristina Lawson. I'm the director and founder of Universal Healing Sanctuary, and we're a ministry of Fifth Element Free Church. Today's talk is Densities of Consciousness, the Perspectives of Truth and Judgment. I wanted to create this talk today because of the discord that has been happening in the world for really forever, but more recently has been very visible in our political landscape. The polarities of beliefs, the anger, the fighting, the absolute hatred. I'm going to talk about how we can start letting go bit by bit of these things and come to more of an understanding of why these things happen in the first place. This topic is hard for me because I, and I'm sure many of you, know the basic teachings on how to overcome it, love your neighbor, etc., but still struggle greatly with putting it into practice, thinking the thoughts and feeling it in the heart. I would estimate 99.99999% of the world struggles with it to different degrees. If we didn't struggle with judgment, anger, hatred, etc., we probably wouldn't be in this dimension, still trying to learn the lessons that are provided here. That lesson, in essence, is to understand duality and pick the positive or negative aspect of it to walk our spiritual journey on. In the higher dimensional planes, or density/consciousness levels, we are asked to fully let go of duality, but we're not quite there yet. It's been a hard experience in working through the paradoxes of what I perceive as right and holy, and fighting against what I deem evil, and then coming to the understanding that the other side feels exactly the same way that I do, but coming from their perspective. Having also gone through many iterations of my beliefs on religion and what God and the spirit world means to me, I find myself being a little softer in the understanding that beliefs should change and evolve over the course of our lives. For many of us in the past, we thought we knew it all and thought we were right, and we preached our perspective loudly, just to look back and sometimes laugh or cringe at what we perceived as truth, versus what we now perceive as truth after learning more. But it was truth to us back then, and we needed that belief at the time based on our own experiences in order to make the bridge to the beliefs we now hold. And in the future, we'll probably look back at where we are today and feel those same feelings as we do about our past selves. So it's always a good idea to rein our perspectives back in every once in a while and review the higher perspective and honestly just chill out. Again, this is a huge message to myself as well, as I tend to get pretty hot-headed in my beliefs, so no judgment here. In our ministry, Universal Healing Sanctuary, we have been doing a book club reading of A Course in Miracles, which is a channeled work of Jesus the Christ. He goes over the topics of the ego, perspectives, non-judgment, etc. It clarifies many misunderstood scriptures that have been understood in our modern day through fear, and he clarifies them in a way that teaches more love. I actually had the idea for this sermon before we started reading it, not knowing much of what would be in it, but was amazed to see just how on point it was for this talk. We're only about a fifth of the way through it, but it's been so amazing to read, so I'll be including messages from the beginning of the book that we've discussed so far, as I feel it would be really helpful. So our first section is going to be on perspectives. So what is a perspective? A perspective is your point of view. It's the lens you see the world through and determines how you view yourself, others, and everything else around you. This can also be called the ego or the individualistic reality you hold. Beliefs are created in one of two ways, either through repetition, which is something you learn, see, do over and over and over again, or through a dramatic emotional impact. Once we have a belief about something, we use that to perceive meaning from our circumstances and surroundings. If we break our old beliefs, we can condition our minds to perceive differently. Once we do that, we can create a brand new perspective. So what are paradoxes? Paradox is when two truths that appear to be conflicting or contradictive. In my little image over here, I show someone's pointing their finger down, and it says the sentence on the right is false. And then the picture on the right, the person's finger is pointing up, and it says the sentence on the left is true. They're saying what seems to be two opposing thoughts, but both of them are true. Polarities are different ends of one spectrum of thought. So, I didn't put an example in here, but you could say one of the best examples people usually bring up is narcissists on one end, being all about me, 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 and then so-called empaths or the victims on the other end. Really, they're both dealing in energies of control, but one uses an outward form of control and the other uses an inward or passive form of control to get what they want. So in essence, they're the same exact energy, just like two sides of the same coin. And then we have duality, which is when we judge the polarities or paradoxes as good or bad. So you can see here Homer Simpson with an angel on his right shoulder and the devil on his left. Polarities and duality is energy swinging from one extreme to the other. This creates the chaos or catalyst that keeps us growing and evolving as a species, because being uncomfortable is what gets us to make a move and create change. This is, however, only needed in lower consciousnesses when we are still in a state of learning. This is why so many high-frequency spiritual teachers have come telling us of a different way, a middle way. They teach us that we can realize that everything is an illusion, a thought of God, and there is a purpose for the light and dark side of God, or the universe, if you want to call it that, to exist. Then we can let it go and just be, understanding it is all going to be okay and that it's all divine and has a purpose. So in my little infographic, you can see the middle way of Buddhism. The Buddha taught the middle way between luxury and self-denial. On one part of the polarity, there's luxury, living the life of a prince with everything. And on the other side of his polarity, he was in self-denial, living a life deprived of all luxuries. He finally came to the realization that it was the middle way that was the truth. A Course in Miracles says the concept of the physical body is presented as a temporary illusion and not the true self, with the true self being the quote-unquote Son of God, or a spiritual essence that transcends the physical realm, which is a light or spirit body. It says, attack is always physical. When attack in any form enters your mind, you are equating yourself with a body, since this is the ego's interpretation of the body. Loss of any kind is impossible, but when you look upon a brother as a physical entity, his power and glory are lost to you, and so are yours. You have attacked him, but you must have attacked yourself. This is why Jesus went without fight to his death, because he knew death in the physical body was an illusion. And he showed us this by the story of the resurrection and coming back in a spiritual light body. Metaphysicians see life as one God, one life, with many expressions manifesting in many individual bodies. These bodies, however, are known to be illusions. It is necessary to move away from a dualistic approach to life in order to understand the higher truths of oneness. In the lower dimensions, we can understand that there are polarities of truth instead of conflicting ideas. Even if something may not be factually true, there can still be a purpose in it and moving that soul forward and learning a lesson, which can still be considered a truth for them. A Course in Miracles says, when the Bible says, judge not, that ye be not judged, it means that if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own. Why is this? because at the highest level, we are all one. Only the ego sees us as separate. So when we judge another, we really judge ourselves. The ego attacks others as a form of control to keep itself alive. Once we realize we are all one under God, the ego is dissolved or dies, and this is the one thing the ego does not want. It wants to live. In my infographic here, you see the finger pointing out with 3 fingers pointing towards yourself. So there are 2 types of truths. The first is absolute truth, which is the unchanging universal truth or principle. Absolute truth always is. This is the truth of God. And then we have relative truth. This is when a person consciously accepts, or what they consciously accept as truth. It occurs at the point when a person consciously swallows a belief. And this is what the majority of creation, humans, entities, that's what we're all working in right now. There's a quote right here that says, "Nobody in the world possesses absolute truth. This is God's attribute alone. Relative truth is all we know. Therefore, we can only follow the truth as we see it. Such pursuit of truth cannot lead anyone astray." Our next section is spiritual bypassing. Now knowing all of this mentally and putting it into action is a whole paradox in itself. I recently had it out with the universe, or God, crying and getting mad at how none of it makes any sense. How can I stand up against what I perceive as evil and harmful and also ignore it and just be okay with it? Isn't this spiritual bypassing? Spiritual bypassing is using spirituality to avoid dealing with difficult emotions and life issues. It can be a defense mechanism that seemingly protects us from harm, but it doesn't resolve problems. It prevents people from acknowledging what they are feeling and distances them from both themselves and others. An example of spiritual bypassing is avoiding feelings of anger because anger will make you quote-unquote bad. It prevents one from standing up for oneself. It prevents fighting and war, but to what cost? The spiritual bypasser will be completely overrun and hurt by the other person or group. But isn't this a contradiction to what Jesus said about not worrying if the body is hurt? This is where my brain has been hurting trying to figure this out. I recently heard the explanation of his words, "turning the other cheek," explained in the historical context of the day, and not what we have been taught it means, which is to forgive and forget, or aka be passive and forgiving. In the ancient world, a slap on the right cheek was a backhanded slap. It was considered a forceful insult and a sign of disrespect, especially when delivered by someone of a higher status. What Jesus was saying is that if you were hit with this backhand, then turn your cheek. This would force the abuser to hit you with the front of his hand, and in that historical concept, hitting with the front of the hand was indicating that both of you were equals, and this in turn would be embarrassing for them. What he was teaching was to not retaliate or resist evil, but to instead to see the abuser, or see the abuse for what it was, and offer a non-violent, non-retaliatory response. It was about exposing the injustice, not accepting it. No bypassing here. You could feel the anger, but don't lash out in physical anger as a response. So it's okay to feel the feelings that come up. That is a part of being a human. It's the indicator there's something still inside of us that needs to be seen, acknowledged, felt, and released. Emotions aren't our enemies, they're messengers. If we get to a place where we truly have no need or feel anything about a certain perspective anymore, then that's okay. And that's not spiritually bypassing anymore. That is the state we are told to reach. But there is no judgment in not being there yet. This section is Paradox of Truth. The paradox of truth and loving everyone refers to the apparent contradiction between fully accepting and loving everyone, regardless of their actions or beliefs, while also holding on to the truth, which may sometimes mean speaking out against harmful behaviors or challenging someone's perspective, potentially causing discomfort or conflict. Essentially, how can you truly love someone while still being honest with them, even when the truth might be difficult to hear? And again, what our quote-unquote truth may be, may still in fact be a perspective or a relative truth, and not an absolute truth or the truth of God. So this is why we cannot judge others without hurting ourselves. Lao Tzu said, "The words of truth are always paradoxical." Balancing compassion with honesty. True love often requires a delicate balance between showing compassion and expressing truth, even when it might be challenging for the person receiving the feedback. The key is to deliver truth with genuine love and concern for the other person's well-being, not with the intention to judge or criticize. Sometimes confronting uncomfortable truths can be a catalyst for personal growth and positive change in the other person. Having boundaries. Love is not all kumbaya all the time by our definition. You don't have to allow people's uncouth behavior or things that harm you. Jesus taught resistance, but it was non-violent, and he never physically hurt anyone. He was called the Great Physician because he healed. He did, however, turn over tables, used a whip to drive animals out of the temple, yelled at people who were desecrating God's house, and said certain rabbinical teachers were of the devil. So is this love? And is this a paradox to the earlier teachings of turning the other cheek? Not really. He never laid a hand on anyone physically to harm them, and the things he said to people were based in absolute truth. Absolute truth equals God's truth, which equals love, which equals bringing them back to God if they listen. You are allowed to step back from others who are not in your frequency or polarity. You don't have to fight. You can point out errors, but be careful with this, as we are all dealing with a lot of relative truth, or our perspective. You are allowed to tell your truth and just leave if you need to, and hold love in your heart for them. This is where we will begin to look into different frequencies and density levels. Earth is a complicated place where many spirits of different densities and frequencies reside. Some are very high and some are very low. The idea here is understanding we are simply different energies inhabiting different bodies in this realm. God allows all experiences and all polarities, and you are an aspect of God, having these polarity experiences. What is not meant for you at this current time to experience is okay to step away from. But it is not okay, according to the Creator and spiritual teachers, to hate those other aspects or people of God. This is the highest perspective, that all is one and all has purpose. And I'll reiterate what Jesus said in the previous slides, that once we realize fully there is no attack against us, and we realize the body is unreal, then there is nothing but love, because we cannot be attacked, not truly when we're in the spirit. And this is a hard one for the ego to accept. This is a message for me, especially because I have definitely struggled with this and still do struggle with this concept. When Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," this was a prayer for those people's minds to be changed back to absolute truth. Jesus had no hate in his heart for those that murdered him. He prayed for them to awaken back to their true selves, to renew their minds, and that they would have no illusions or perspectives or ego, and be one with God again. But you'll notice Jesus also didn't hang out with these same people closely. He had a small group of students and friends he spent his time with, who listened to his messages, and who went on to teach the same messages after he left. This was in keeping with his frequency and positive polarity while here on Earth. These infographics over here say, sometimes to follow in the footsteps of Jesus is to walk away from others or to let them walk away from us. And Jesus never said, let them abuse you, don't walk away, forget it happened, or keep it a secret. This section is the density levels. In spirituality, density levels refers to different planes of consciousness or existence, often described as ascending levels of awareness, with each density representing a higher state of being. This means moving from a more physical and limited perspective, which is 1D through 3D, to a more refined, non-physical, and interconnected one, which is 4D to 7D. Here are some of these density levels in relation to our 7 chakra system. According to the Law of One, which is a channeling book from the entity Ra, and is one of our favorite spiritual books, there are levels of consciousness that all beings go through. None are judged as right or wrong, but as an evolution up through different paths, each with their own purpose. Similarly, quote-unquote good, which the book calls service to others, and quote-unquote evil, which the book calls service to self, are not judged either. Service to self is in actuality still giving service to others because they are serving themselves, and they are a part of the One, which includes all beings. These beings just don't know this yet. Service to others, on the other hand, creates positive growth, whereas service to self creates the chaos or catalyst for that growth. For example, the biggest growths we go through as humans is usually when we are going through the worst time in our lives. It forces us to make changes so we can stop feeling the sadness, the uncomfortableness, and the anger. They are just 2 paths the soul can travel down for spiritual lessons. Both are needed until they are at the end of the path and then are reabsorbed together in God. Dimensions are the physical space in which your consciousness can move. So, for example, Earth is a physical place, a 3D planet. Whereas density, which could also be considered frequency, is based on the quality of your consciousness, the quality of your thought. So, for example, you can be on a 3D planet of chaos and war, but have the frequency or the density of a 5D being, living in love and wisdom. So you are living in both 3D, which is the dimension, and 5D, which is your density. So we're going to walk through the Law of One and the different levels that it talks about in the book. So when you first become a consciousness straight from God, you enter what is called the first density. This is the density of beingness. These are usually elements, or you become an elemental. These are fire, air, water, earth. Minerals and water, learning from wind and fire. It's just the awareness of being something conscious. This density, these beings will have atomic bodies, and a soul will have to go through a 2 billion year cycle before they can move on to the next density. Second density is growth. This is an autonomous life form organisms, plants to animals. So things like cells, bugs, and then wild animals. These develop awareness of self through interaction with the environment. And these are consciousnesses that are also usually almost like a hive mind. So a lot of wild animals, you'll see that they are in packs, and they don't have any individuation yet. This being will have a chemical body, so that means something physical like what we have. And this is a 4.6 billion year cycle. And this being will incarnate from anywhere from like 1 to 200 years. So the third density, which is where we are on Earth, this is self-awareness. We are here. Our subconscious is veiled from the conscious to give a genuine choice of polarity. So this is the time, this is why Earth is so hard, the book explains, because this is a planet that is 50-50, quote-unquote good and quote-unquote evil. It's the choice of service to others versus service to self polarity. And they say once you choose that polarity while here on Earth, then the rest of your soul incarnation throughout all the millions and billions of years will be in that polarity. So this is a very, very, very important place to be and an important choice to make. We also here have chemical bodies. We will go through a 75,000 year cycle, and our incarnations are usually anywhere from 30 to 900 years. So, like in the Bible or other ancient texts where it talked about how humans used to live that long, that's why that says 30 to 900 years for Earth beings. We are in third density, but many are saying that we are actually moving into fourth density. This is the density of the heart or love. Jesus was actually a spiritual teacher and an archetype of the fourth density. This kind of being will learn the lessons of light and wisdom. Earth has been in fourth density vibration since 2012. This being also has a chemical/light body. So you'll notice in the story of Jesus, he came in a normal human body and then resurrected into a light body. He was showing us the transition. The fourth density is between physical and light. It's like an in-between dimension. This density has a 30 million year cycle and an incarnation of 90,000 years. And then the fifth density of light and wisdom. The Buddha was an archetype of this. This kind of being will learn to perfectly balance love and light and wisdom, learns how to serve without martyrdom or self-sacrifice. And I thought it was a little funny. Coming from a Christian background, we learn the stories of Jesus and how he came and martyred, himself to show his teachings of love. And then the book, the love one, kind of laughs at this a little bit and said, that's not really necessary when you get to the higher densities. You don't have to sacrifice yourself to show the lessons. So, just putting that out there. This fifth density body will be a body of pure light. So these are, things like higher dimensional ETs, maybe lower dimensional angels, stuff like that. And they have a 50 million year cycle and an immortal incarnation. At this level, you really only, quote unquote, die when you want to. You kind of just walk through the door, the portal back to God, and then choose to reincarnate whenever you want. And I think this is also where a lot of maybe Indian gurus are. I've heard a few of them have reached that level where they can choose to leave Earth or leave their body when they want to. So interesting. The next density is the sixth density. This is the density of unity. These are beings like archangels. At this level, you actually can't go any further in the service to self polarity and the quote-unquote evil polarity. At sixth density, all beings realize the truth of God and the truth of the mission, the truth of all the lessons that we're here to learn. And so at this point, all beings that reach this actually turn backwards in time to serve its past selves. And this is where our concept of the higher self comes from. It's actually you from the future. So in the sixth density, these beings learn the lessons of forgiveness, of foreverness and eternity. It's a body of pure light. So like I said, it's higher level angels, essentially. And this is a 75 million year cycle and an immortal incarnation. The last one that we experience in this whole cycle is the 7th density, which is called the gateway. It's when you're one with all, having no memory, no identity, no past or future, but existing in the all. So sometimes when people say they have near-death experiences and then they go to this place of like bright white light and they just lose all sense of themselves and it's just love, I think that that's what they're tapping into, is the 7th density. So in this density, it serves as teachers to the higher selves in 6th density. They have 1 foot in time and 1 foot in eternity. You enter a black hole at the end of the 7th density. So back, I guess, into that like chaos or the womb of creation, you know, like the Bible talks about in Genesis, where it says everything was like dark and black and void. I think that's what that is. It's the chaos of creation. And then so Ra in the Law of One, he says that, I think they said that they were 6th density beings, so they didn't know too much about 7th density, only what their guides and teachers have told them about it, and they didn't really know much about the 8th density, which is actually the 1st density in a whole nother octave above our entire cycle. So we have no idea how crazy it's going to be up there. But he was explaining that the creation kind of works like 7 chords, the scale of music, right? You have your 7 chords and then it jumps up again to another 7 chords. They're the same chords, they're just on a different octave, right? So he was saying that's how creation works. And we only have the information about the octave that we are in currently. So yeah, so the 8th/1st density of the next octave is once the past octave or universe has absorbed into itself through the black hole of the great central sun/logos, a new octave begins. This octave starts then with a big bang, coming out of a white hole, expanding space and time. The next octave or universe is unfathomable. So with that, these are my final thoughts. So by now, I hope you understand how the dimensions, densities, and levels of consciousness work. As hard it is for our egos to accept, there is truly no evil on the highest level of understanding, but simply a distortion from absolute truth that is catalyzing us all to learn lessons and to move back towards God. Having the mental realization of how this works and having the actual mental and physical action is another thing, however. It is the biggest step in our reawakening back towards oneness and God. The overall lesson is to live in as much love as we can, because we are all a part of God. We are all experiencing our own truths in relation to our dimension and density levels of understanding, and the lessons we are each individually tasked with. Let's give each other as much grace as we can with God. There is no judgment in how long it takes the soul to go through this evolution. Just know that in the end of the ages, we will all have this realization and perfect action. So enjoy the grand game, and thanks for listening.